Welcome to the Chum Kiu live tutorial on Zoom. As I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, the original video unfortunately had some connectivity issues, so essentially what I had to do was reshoot the tutorial, which means that those of you who did the live tutorial, you will get a brand new reshot version here, and those of you who did not do it will get a cleaner version of what it otherwise was. So without further ado, the Chum Kiu tutorial, Wing Chun's second form for intermediate students. So we begin with the meaning of Chum Kiu. The first character, Chum, means to seek or to search. And if you see the number 4 there, that again is an indicator of the proper tone in Cantonese. Cantonese having 6 tones, and the word Chum being on the 4th tone, which is a low falling tone. And it means again to seek or search. Kiu means bridge, so Chum Kiu together means to seek or to search for the bridge. When we go into the history of the form, we essentially have a very similar problem to what we have with the Sunum Tao, that no one really knows. We can speculate a little bit about the history of the form. Wing Chun, as we know it, was most likely developed around the 1850s. And what we mean by as we know it, meaning more or less the modern setup with the 3 forms and the wooden dummy and perhaps the weapons, or at the very least the long pole. Previous versions of the art may have had a Chum Kiu form, but perhaps it was part of something longer, like a combination of the 3 hand forms. Chum Kiu form has also changed a little bit during Grandmaster Yip Man's 22-year teaching career, although not to the degree of the Sunum Tao or the wooden dummy. Variations on the form. Kicking methods. So the variation of the form, or I should say the version of the form that I'm going to present here, is the version taught by Sifu Alex, at least as I understood it. And one of the variations of the Alex or WT version are that the kicking methods have a slight differentiation between how many of Grandmaster Yip Man's students perform it. For one, according to Sifu Alex, there were documents in the old Fatzan that the old Fatzan Chum Kiu had 3 unique kicking methods as opposed to 2. Most of the modern Yip Man Wing Chun practitioners have only 2 unique kicks in the Chum Kiu form, namely the front thrust kick and some kind of odd angle slant kick, and the front thrust kick being repeated 2 times on each side. So the 3 kicking methods in the WT method are the front kick, the side kick, and the slant kick. Additional variations of the form include the mansao. The mansao is done in the form in double format. It's a double mansao used to counter an overhead choi lei fut punch. That's what CLF means there. The cutting punch is another variation that is in the WT form. The cutting punch is the so-called under-the-bridge punch and is a necessary variation when the bridge is too high to punch over. Sometimes it's known as Kiu Dai Kun, or literally bridge under punch. So here we have an overview of those 3 variations. Again, the kicking methods, the 3 versions rather than 2, the mansao, and the cutting punch. And these are the main differentiations or variations between the WT version and most of the other mainstream Yip Man lineages. The focus of the Chum Kiu form. Well, if the Sunum Tao is like learning the ABCs, then the Chum Kiu can be likened to learning words and simple phrases. Chi Sao is grammar and usage. Sparring is conversation. If the Sunum Tao is about individual points, then the Chum Kiu is about consolidating points together, and we'll discuss this a little bit when I go over the opening of the Chum Kiu form. Hands and feet are unified as one. This is a major idea in the Chum Kiu form. Defensive and offensive Wing Chun structures are introduced. Force transfer. Force transfer is a big topic. Obviously, we want to be able to transfer power towards our opponent. We have 3 different methods in the Chum Kiu form for force transfer. The first one is waist power, or waist rotation to generate power, quote, from the hips. We have displacement power, which is the standard stepping or displacement method in Wing Chun, where we essentially step into our opponent's stance and move them by displacing them. And the third one is a drop step, using gravity to generate a body weight strike. Sometimes it's known as the falling step. Breathing in Chum Kiu. This was kind of a larger topic in the Sunum Tao tutorial, but in Chum Kiu we follow our basic guideline for breathing, which is to just breathe. In other words, we don't need to do any special breathing techniques, although you're more than welcome to practice the reverse breathing or Yik Fu Cup if you have learned it. Now, the little idea focus in Chum Kiu. We want, again, just like in the first form, focus on little ideas and not big ideas. Wing Chun techniques are multi-dimensional, meaning that they have many applications and uses. As a result, we don't want to think of individual applications. These are big ideas, especially we don't want to think about applications in terms of a sequence. For example, people think in the Chum Kiu that you do the grab and then the side lan sao and then you kick someone, and then instead of a stepping bong, it's actually an elbow strike. And these are completely wrong in the WT methodology. And that is essentially a indicator of applying big ideas where you should be using small ideas. So think of movement ideas: elbow, posture, hand position, steps. These are the little ideas that we want to be thinking about when we're practicing Chum Kiu form, rather than applying, specific choreography as application to stretches of the form. 3 parts versus 4 parts. So traditionally, the Chum Kiu form is divided into 3 parts, 3 being a lucky number in Chinese culture, 4 being an unlucky number. However, the Chum Kiu form, if you divide it thematically, has 4 parts, not 3. And I am not superstitious, so therefore I divide the Chum Kiu into 4 parts rather than in the quote-unquote traditional 3. Now, setting the stance. We're going to get into this in a moment when I demonstrate that, but setting the stance, we lower the center of gravity. The Saokun and the setting of the stance are simultaneous, which is different from the Siu Tao form. We have an emphasis on the Chum Kiu's consolidation of points rather than a separate point-by-point method. In the opening of the form, we continue this consolidation theme. That means we go directly into the Gao Cha Gan Sao. There's no initial Tan Sao. The Guan Sao, the Gao Cha Tan Sao, same as the Siu Tao. We have no pause on the center line for punch. We punch directly, but on the same path as Siu Tao. And we immediately fire the second punch after the first Hun Sao rather than waiting for it to retract. The speed is the same, only the timing is different, and I will explain that in detail in the next part. Okay, so when we start the Chum Kiu form, it's important to realize that there's a progression, not just obviously in the new movements you're going to learn, but also in the idea of the Chum Kiu versus the Siu Tao. Siu Tao is all about point by point, this concept of dim dim jing. Now we still have dim dim jing in all of our forms, but the idea is a little bit different. In Chum Kiu, we take those individual points, which we do one by one in the Siu Tao, and we start to consolidate them and compress them together. So, for example, in the Siu Tao form, when you set the stance, you start with your feet together, you bring the hands up, you bend the knees, you open and close the stance here like this. So those are all done kind of step by step. In the Chum Kiu form, we assume you can already do that. You understand the step-by-step progression. So what we do is we start with the feet together in the same way, but instead of bringing the hands up first and then setting the stance, we consolidate these movements. And that is a big idea of Chum Kiu versus Siu Tao. Think about Siu Tao as learning the individual points, and then Chum Kiu is putting those points together into something that's more functional. So if the Siu Tao is the ABCs of Wing Chun, then Chum Kiu is like learning words and simple phrases. So we put it together and set the stance this way here. Now in the Siu Tao form, in the WT Siu Tao form, we start with the cross Tan Sao, we pause it, go into Gan Sao, internal rotation, and back. In the Chum Kiu form, we assume you know where the center line is, so we don't need this crutch of the first Tan Sao, so we go immediately into the low Gan Sao. Then we have an internal rotation, pause here for a moment, and then come back. Very important not to just do it like this, because then you're missing the point-by-point flow. So we go immediately into Gan Sao, no cross Tan, internal rotation, pause the cross Tan, and then come straight back. Now when we go to the punch, we follow the same idea. Instead of pausing in the center and punching, which is how we do it in Siu Tao, we do it in one action. But very important to understand, the punch still travels on the same path as in Siu Tao. So many Wing Chun practitioners, they make a mistake. They think because the Siu Tao stops in the middle and punches, that this is an indoor punch. And because the Chum Kiu goes in one direct motion, it's an outdoor punch. And this is adding context and layers to the form that don't exist. It's actually much more simple than that. It's about putting things together. It's not about putting context into the form. So the punch is done in one action. Then we open, circle, and rather than withdrawing the hand and then punching with the other hand, as we finish the Hun Sao, we launch the second punch over the top. Open, circle, and then back. Now, common mistake people make with the Chum Kiu form, because the opening is similar to Siu Tao but slightly modified. Some people think that the opening of Chum Kiu is just done more quickly, and that's not true at all. It's not a matter of just do the gansao quick, tansao quick, punch quick. Actually, the punches and the gansao and the tansao are done at the same speed as the sunumtao. It's just that there's no initial tansao. We go here, but we still pause briefly at the moment, at the bottom, I should say. Then internal rotation, we pause briefly here, and then we go back. So there's no, it's not this kind of flow through nonsense. It's internal rotation and back. If we looked at the sunumtao form, 1, 2, 3, back. If we look at the Chum Kiu, 1, 2, 3, it's the same speed. It's just a little compressed that we don't have the opening time. Now when we look at the punch, we don't pause in the middle, but we go. That's not much different than the speed of the punch in the sunumtao. There's just no pause. Hunsao is done at the same speed. It's not done quicker. And the second punch is done at the same speed. It's just done before I retract the other one. So very important when you think of the opening of Chum Kiu, not to think of it as being done faster than the sunumtao, but it's the sunumtao layered on top of each other at the same speed with slightly offset timing. And that's the opening of the Chum Kiu form. Okay, let's go over the part 1 points in a little bit of detail. The general ideas. Power through the fingers. This is a big idea in the first part, or I should say a major idea, not a big idea. Then we have stance and waist unified, and this is practiced through the 90-degree turn with the pai zhang / lan sao structure. We have the 45-degree turn. In the turn, the center line rests on the shoulder. This is a very important idea for the first part of Chum Kiu. And the junma bong sao, or the turning bong sao, is one of the main technique ideas that we have in the first part. So the stance focus is the advancing stance, the turning stance, and the frontal stance. In other words, we have all 3 of the Wing Chun stances present in part 1 of Chum Kiu. Additionally, the focus is on the advancing stance and the turning stance. We don't focus that much on the frontal stance, as the frontal stance is part of the first form. So the little focus on the frontal stance is very clearly because that is what we focus on in the first form. Okay, so now that we worked on the opening of the Chum Kiu form and how it's slightly modified from the sunumtao, let's go ahead and continue with the form. So let's review real quick. We start with the feet together. Actually, it's technically 1 finger distance apart, so there's a little bit of a gap. Don't forget to take a breath, relax, let all the tension out, just like when we do the sunumtao form. You bring the hands straight up and bend the knees, and then open the stance. And now from here, straight into gansao, internal rotation, and back. Punch in 1 action, open. Full circle, punch over the bridge, open, circle, and back. Now from here, we're going to push this forward. When we do this, it's extremely important to remember that this movement here, which is essentially nameless, some people call it QSL, but that's actually not really a proper name for it. We'll just call it the nameless move. When we do this here, this is an elbow-driven movement, whereas a lot of people do it like a hand-driven movement. So push forward from the elbow, keeping the shoulders down. And from the side, you're going to notice that this position here is a little bit more steep than the double jump cell from sunumtao. Lots of WT practitioners basically repeat the double jump cell from the sunumtao, and this is actually not correct. This should be done this way here, the hands kind of in front of your chest with a slightly more vertical angle on the arms. And now from here, you're going to launch your chest forward slightly and pull the head back this way here. Pulling the head back is an important movement in Wing Chun. We use it when we do indoor punches to give us a little bit of space if a punch slips over the top. We pull our head back like this. We don't lift our head and lift our chin up. This is a recipe for getting knocked out. Lifting your chin up and you get punched, it's lights out. When we have to pull our head back to avoid getting hit, you do it like if you're opening an oven and you get that blast of hot air, your face kind of pushes back like this. So if you imagine taking your chin and pushing it into your neck. So what you do is you have a reinforced neck position instead of this chin up. This is a very, very common error, and you're basically putting your chin up there to get knocked out. So from the side, you pause here for a moment and then launch and head back. This way here with the chin back this way here. The fingers should be roughly eye distance apart. In application, we use the thumbs usually to gouge the eyes, but do not articulate your thumbs in the Chum Kiu form. That's another common error that people make. You want to keep your fingers straight so you can practice what we call lik gu ji, which means the power goes through the fingers. if your fingers are crumpled or your thumb is bent or you're doing anything like this, you're kind of holding that there. You want the fingers straight and let the power go through all of these joints. And now from here, we're gonna fold and turn. Very important that we don't set the arms and then turn, as you sometimes see in some of the other Wing Chun styles. Chum Kiu is all about coordinating hand and feet together as one. So that's why when we turn here, we want to finish in this position here. So the hands start, the stance starts. The hands finish, the stance finishes. So you want to get this as a one very smooth timing. Now from here, we're going to do the standard Wing Chun turn, 180 degrees. Posture doesn't move at all. Keep an upright posture, no leaning back. The upper body is a statue, and you turn the lower body this way here, and then turn again. Now we do a double fuksao. When we do the double fuksao, the elbows come in. Very common mistake. People leave the elbows out and flare it like this. Think about bringing the elbows in, doing the double fuksao with your forearms on what we call the suspenders line. So I open this way here, and now I turn it over into tansao. Paksao 1, paksao 2, paksao 3. Now if you look at the paksao, I'm not gripping my forearm here. It's another common mistake. I'm not doing the paksao down. I'm not lifting the elbow up. Elbows low, shoulders low. Paksao is done with the root of the palm on the inside of my forearm here. You just place it. This hand here is a mid-tansao, not flat, just like this. Second, third. Now we take this hand over, and you're just going to turn this a little bit so that you occupy the center from the front. The only reason I do this is so that my palm strike can cross over to the center. If I don't do that, I'm hitting off the side, and that feels awkward for us in Wing Chun. So we cross 1, 2, and pull back on the third one. Okay, so it's very important when we strike in the Wing Chun forms that not only do we fully extend our joints because we want to get full range of motion and make sure that we're not shortening our arm by keeping our arms bent, but also we want to execute the power correctly. So just as a very rough example, if you're doing the palm strikes, for example, the palm strikes in this section of Chum Kiu, you want to imagine that if you're accelerating your arm, just to use a random example, at 10 miles an hour, okay? That very last bit of extension, when you're about to fully flex your joints, you change the speed to 20, because we always want to exert power late in the arm. If you exert power early in the arm, the power stays in the arm. If you exert power late, then the power goes out of your arm. So we can practice this in the form, and I'll do it very slow just to illustrate it. As I do the palm strike here, if I keep a steady rate of speed as I'm about to extend, I would just accelerate it at the very end as I engage my arms. Now this is the same for the punch, it's the same for the palm, it's essentially the same for any of our strikes in the form. So if we go back to this part of Chum Kiu, where here we just did our fuksao, from this position, crossing the arms, we go paksao 1, paksao 2, paksao 3, and we cross the hand, palm strike 1, palm strike 2, and pull back on the third one. So you see at the end how I accelerate it. Now, after this part here, we're going to turn 180 degrees using the turning stance, feet parallel, weight on the back leg, posture straight. This is Lansao, 90-degree angles all the way around. Now from here, I'm going to sink into Tansao. I'm not bringing this hand forward, I'm bringing this one back, and this elbow is sinking to the cross Tansao here. Now for brand new beginners to Chum Kiu, we have them form the bong sao, wu sao first, and then turn 45 degrees. Once the students have that position down, then we let the hands move slightly before the feet, but we don't have to fully finish it. We just allow the hands to go forward, and then we go into the turn. So brand new beginners to Chum Kiu, do a preset and then a turn. And once you're no longer a beginner to the Chum Kiu, you start to do it together at the same time, sending the arms forward, but it doesn't have to be rigid or with a lot of power. This is the Juma bong sao, the turning stance bong sao, how we unload power that comes directly to us. Here, turn, and back. So we do that a total of 3 times. Now from here, you bring the fist to the center, punch to the nose. This is an indoor punch, so it has to be nose height. Face forward for a brief moment, you're in the Lansao. This continues on as a faksao. Remember, faksao was always elbow driven, not like this. We discussed those details in the Chum Kiu tutorial. So we do a faksao, and now from the elbow, my fuksao comes in, this way here. Hand comes on top, not at the elbow, but the middle of the forearm, and I shoot this over the pinky and do the eye striking hand. Finger straight, do not articulate the thumb. That's another common mistake in the Chum Kiu. So we go here. Since the hand is open, I don't need to do the tansao. I just circle directly here,
close the fist and bring it straight back. Now we repeat that exactly the same, just reversed for the other side. So we push here forward slowly, pause, launch, head back, turn, fold the arms, posture straight, turn, posture straight, turn, double foot out, packs out 1, 2, and 3, palm straight, 1, 2, and pull back on the third one, turn 180, cross tan, bong wu and turn, 45 degrees, lance out, cross tan, bong wu and turn, lance out, cross tan, bong wu and turn, back to the center, place the fist in the center, punch to the nose, fax out face forward, foot out elbow in, hand on top, thrust, directly circle, and come back. And that is the first part of Chum Kiu.
Now we go into part 2 points. Let's look at the general ideas. The shoulder doesn't move when we kick. The stance and waist stay unified when we do the step. The Paojang Bongsao, or the throwing elbow Bongsao, which is the one done with the step and has a different application from the Junma Bongsao of the first part. Waist rotation in the Chaozhongkun, or the lifting punch, is a very, very important point. Our stance focus is the Dapo side step from the turning stance. And the focus is clearly on the turning stance here, but rather than the actual turning of it, we use an advancing step.
The Bongsao Wusao turn is a very prominent movement in the Chum Kiu form. We have it in the first part of Chum Kiu with the turn, and we have Bongsao Wusao, the same position but with a step in the second part. The reason this features prominently in the form is because it's a very common position, but it's also a very difficult one to get correct. Between the various Wing Chun lineages, there's lots of disagreement and lots of different ways of doing the Bongsao Wusao. The most important thing is that the way you do the Bongsao Wusao makes sense to the particular Wing Chun style that you do. There's some Wing Chun styles that put the Wusao hand here on the side because they just want to grab and punch and do it like this every time. In WT, we have our hand in the center because we don't like to move our hand off to the side because it's easy to get trapped because you're no longer on the center. We don't believe that the center line moves when we turn. The center line is in the same place, it doesn't float. So we want to keep the Wusao in the center because this keeps our hand very close to our opponent and also allows us to very quickly counterattack rather than to have to slice the arm all the way down and run the risk of getting trapped. The other reason why we keep the hand in the center here is because we need to protect ourselves. If there's a straight punch coming right at me to the center, then if it's in contact with my wrist, I need to turn until it passes my shoulder. Once it passes my shoulder, that means I'm no longer in the line of the punch. If my Bongsao is here and I turn, I'm still in the line of the punch. So that's why when we turn and keep the Bongsao in front of our body, this can only defend against a punch that's not really coming at us. But if this punch were to continue coming at me, I'm still in line with the punch. So that's why being in a turn, doing the Bongsao in front of the body doesn't make any sense. But it also doesn't make any sense to have it over here where there's nothing to defend over here. So what we're trying to do is just get literally to that knife's edge of where my wrists, which are in one line in the front, I turn sideways here and I just avoid the punch to the front. That's all I need. This is our Bong Wu with the 45-degree turn. That's how we do it in WT. Okay, so now we get to the second part of Chum Kiu where we have our first kick in the Chum Kiu form, which is the side kick. So we start in the frontal stance because we had just finished the first part. Now we're going to open the left hand. We open the left hand with the thumb in this position and we're going to grab. You close the hand when it reaches the edge of your shoulder. So we don't close the hand and then push it to the side. You close the hand here. Now you're going to shift to the side with what we call the side lance out. The arm should be level with the floor. You can pivot out the supporting foot if you want to pre-position the side kick. Now, one of the exercises I like the students to practice before they learn the side kick is to be able to lift this without the upper body moving much because you don't want this flopping around for the side kick. So you lift this one up here and you launch the side kick. You're gonna pin the foot because it's always the front leg that pulls in the Wing Chun stepping method, and you slide into the Bongsao Wusao. Now, this end position that I'm in is identical to the first set. The only difference is instead of turning into Bongsao, I'm stepping. But the end position is the same. So it's not a low Bongsao, it's not over here, it's not high. It has to be the same as the first part. Now from here, I sink the front arm to the rear arm to do the cross time. not to the hip, not to the side, here in the center. So if I turn back to the middle, my hands would be here. And now I'm going to step again, short step, not a long step, dragging my foot, and as I step, I do the bong sao. Common mistake among WT people is they misinterpret hands before feet, and they do it in this part of the Chum Kiu, and essentially completely ruin the form. They do this. And that is actually not how it's done at all. It's the exact opposite of how it should be done. You keep your hands in tan sao position and you slide, and then you do the bong sao. Sink one more time, step, slide. Now from the turning stance, we change to the advancing stance. So there's a slight shift in the hip, a very subtle use of the spine, not exaggerated, subtle, and you pull the other hand back and do the lifting punch, which is essentially the uppercut right under the chin. Face the hand down, turn to the front in the fook sao, hand on top, thrust forward, same as before, go directly into the circle and pull back. Now we repeat this on the other side. Open the hand first, grab to the side, shift and turn. You can pre-position your supporting foot, posture remains upright. Lift the knee, launch the side kick, step and pull. Feet parallel, 45-degree turn. Sink the elbow. Really think of sinking. Step and bong, sink. Step and bong. Lifting punch, fook sao face forward, hand on top, thrust, circle, and back. And that's the second part of the Chum Kiu form.
Part 3 points. General ideas. Shoulder doesn't move when we kick, which is a general idea of kicking anyway. Stance and waist unified, this time with the advancing step, working on the correct timing of the hand techniques. We have the dai bong sao, or the low bong sao. The man sao on release of contact. The stance focus here is the advancing stance. So the focus is on the advancing stance with the step.
Okay, so now we're going to go to the third part of the Chum Kiu form, which is with the front kick. So we just finished the second part, so we're back in the frontal stance. We're in this position here. And we're going to turn 90 degrees to the side. Now without our body wobbling or moving, we're going to lift the knee straight up. Now this is very important. A number of Wing Chun people, when they do the kick, they do what's known as geuk, the point kick, and they do it like this. All right, they do kind of a short kick. We call it the old man kick, all right? And yes, this is efficient. Yes, this is a very direct kick, but no, this is not going to stop anyone who's really trying to attack you. And even if you have a very good stiff leg kick, remember, part of what we're training in the forms is movement. We want to improve the overall quality of our movement. And we don't do that by kicking like this. So this is why we exaggerate the range of motion a little bit, and we're going to lift the knee up as if we're delivering a knee strike. Now what this does is this improves your hip mobility, but it also improves your balance. And from here you have to drop the knee to kick with the heel. So it becomes a true thrusting kick. Now, when we apply the kick in fighting, which is beyond the scope of this tutorial, of course our front thrust kick is going to be a lot more direct. But it's a lot more direct because we have all of this movement ability in the tank, because we have trained the full range of motion. If you only train the kick like this, you're not going to have a lot of mobility in the tank when you need it. So this is why we exaggerate things a little bit in the form, and in fighting everything is much shorter and more direct. So lift the knee straight up, kick, and then you're going to step into the low bong sao, keeping all your weight on the back leg. The low bong sao, the wrists are in line with the what we call the suspenders line. Down here, this is the dai bong sao. It's not the cow sao, and it's not noi bong. From here, lower the elbows into the mid tan sao, which are also on the suspenders line. Not here. This is to collapse. This position. And now we're going to step. And at the same time you step, you do the bong sao, just like the previous step. So it's not hands before feet. This is totally incorrect. Step, tan sao, and one more time. Now from here, we're going to take a short forward step, pre-positioning the foot in a straight line. And at the same time, we go forward and we do the double man sao. The wrist of the man sao should be at least as high as your forehead, can be a little bit higher. You can let the wrist bend a little bit like this with the pinky side up. Think about coordinating the hands and feet together. So it's not hands first and then the feet follow up. It's not feet and then the hands. It's same time. They begin and end at the same time. And then from here, powerful jut sao, double palm, let the hands go limp, circle, and pull back. Now when we do the back step, this foot steps directly behind this one here. Not in a straight line behind, but directly behind my supporting foot. And then in one swift action, you turn 180 degrees, all at once. Be mindful not to do some variations like this. This is not really the traditional WT way. So we step back here and then we turn. Now we're gonna repeat. We lift the leg, kick, step, low bong sao. Tan sao, step, low bong sao. Tan sao, step, low bong sao. Double man sao, jut sao, palm strike, circle, and back. And then we're gonna pivot on the heel, all right, of the left foot and the toe of the right foot. So when you're done, your feet are in what we call a T stance, all right? So from here, without getting taller, you pivot, all your weight is on this leg is really light, and now we're set up to do the fourth set.
Part 4 points. General ideas. The 45-degree turn, center line rests on the shoulder. This is the motto, Tsaksan Yi Bokwai M. We have miscellaneous specialized footwork. We have the odd angle back kick, aka the slant kick, and we have the side step or the anchor step. We have the jumping and cutting punch, which is starting to focus on the idea of hitting from wherever you are. The stance focus here is the turning stance. The focus is on shifting properly and swiftly for defense.
Okay, so now we're in this T stance. We just finished the third part. All of the weight is on this leg. This leg is essentially an empty leg. Your posture is facing to the front. We're gonna do the slant kick, very important with the slant kick. The knee is out, the toe is out, but the body is that way, all right? So very important not to turn the body and do the kick like this. That would just be a front kick, right? So from here, we keep our body straight. We lift the knee and kick with the toe out. Obviously in kick practice, you wanna be able to hold this one out there for a little bit without the hands moving around. So we do the slant kick, drop, and then slide. This is what's known as the Chum Kiu or the anchor step. So to keep from falling over, we drag this one on the floor with heavy knee pressure. So slant kick, slide, gum sao, wu sao. And again, just enough to clear this space. Here, this is too far. Here, I'm still in the line of the attack. Just clear it. And we turn gum sao, wu sao. And on the third one, we use the sau-kun or the retracting fist. Now you bring the elbow in. This is called jit sao or folding hand. We don't pull it back, you just fold the arm and do a jumping punch to the nose. For beginners, do it in 2 steps. 1, 2. For seniors, start to do it in 1 action. Then we pull this hand back first before we do the gum sao. Common mistake, people lift the arm and do something like this. That's not what we mean by going over your arm. We mean that you pull this back. And when this arm is more or less center line height, then you press this one over and go here. Elbow in, jumping punch, pull this one back and then go over. Don't go over early, common mistake. Pull back in here. On the last one, elbow in, jumping punch. Bring the other fist to the chambered position. Cutting punch. Cutting punch also goes to the nose. Then you drop the hand, 1, 2, and traditionally the form ends here. Open, circle, pull back, straighten the right foot, shift over, and go this way here. In the CWTAA, my association, I adopted a variation from one of my Kung Fu uncles in Hong Kong, which is that after that final punch, 1, 2, 3, instead of pulling back in the sau-kun, we have a round of punches and turns. We go 1, 2, 3, turn, 1, 2, 3, turn, 1, 2, 3, 4, open, circle, and back, and then we close the stance. I like the addition of the extra turns because any chance students have to practice turning and punching just allows them to have more reps and more coordination between their hands and feet. So we added it as kind of a signature of our school. But if you want to be traditional to the Learn Ting method, then you would just cut, drop 1, 2, 3, and finish that way as well. And that finishes out the Chum Kiu form. All right, guys, let's shoot off some questions. Let me know if you also have questions theoretical on the Chum Kiu form. Not so much application because it's a little bit out of the scope of today's tutorial. We're definitely focusing a little bit more on the form itself. How can we get that edit? Well, I just finished editing the Siunam Tao tutorial, which I did last week. That will be available on our online shop. For those who did the tutorial, we have like a massive discount too if you want to get the recording of it. And for people who didn't do the tutorial, they have to pay full price for it. So same thing with the Chum Kiu. We'll give you guys a massive discount if you've already done this one here. Okay, when does the next book come out? I'm almost finished with the next book. The next book is the 15 Chi Sao Fundamentals, which is the Pun Sao program and the basics of Chi Sao. I'm almost done with that. That should be out soon. And then after that will come the Wooden Dummy book, and then BUG, and then Wing Chun 101. So they're all coming out of order, a little bit like Star Wars, except I hope mine don't suck as bad as the new Star Wars movies. All right, so can you please show slowly the first set what you mean with the elbow move and the knee do not move? Okay, so all right, so there is a saying in Wing Chun that is when the elbow moves, the stance does not move. When the stance moves, the elbow doesn't move. And this is often totally bastardized by most Wing Chun people because the elbow moving, stance not moving motto is only for turning. It has nothing to do with advancing and it has nothing to do with attack. In other words, this is a hyper specific motto which is only for turning, and the asterisk, only when you're turning passively. And basically what this means is when you're using a passive technique, for example, the classic examples are bong sao, wu sao, and quan sao, you have to form the hand first before you can turn the body. Because part of the problem, and Dre, can I borrow you for a moment? Sure. All right, lucky I have a coronavirus-free partner here, all right? Okay, so, we have this situation. Let me adjust the camera to get our awesome, there we go. Look at this, beautiful. Okay, so for example, someone tries to do Jutsao, control you this way here, all right? He does Jutsao punch and he controls me like this. Many Wing Chun people, they try to shift very quickly. Like the problem is your opponent just does this, boom, very fast. The hands are very fast. And if you try to turn faster than your partner can punch, you're going to lose every single time because you're basically pitting the speed of your body against the speed of their hand. The hand's going to win every time. So what do? We use our hands first. So the hands have to move before the stance. That's what we move. Elbow moves, stance doesn't move. Doesn't mean elbow, means the whole arm, okay? So when he gives me a Jutsao, the first thing I do is try to hit him. I'm not trying to turn. Why would I do this? Go again, quick. Jutsao, Jutsao. You see how many people, they do it like this, all right? Trying to outrun a punch with their body. Insane, all right? Completely insane. When someone grabs our arm, it's always the hands first. If I can hit him first, why would I turn? The turn is wasted. But if I run into his arm and he has good power, then maybe he turns me. So that means now my stance moves, but my arms do not move when I turn. So that means hands move first. If they make contact, now the stance moves, the hands don't move. Same with bong sao. Elbow moves, stance doesn't move. Stance moves, elbow doesn't move. Same exact thing. It's yin and yang. One moves, the other one doesn't move. It's like anchor and movement, all right? Yin and yang. All right, distinction between the advancing step, advancing stance and turning stance, also all indoor punches by definition a jumping punch. No, not all indoor punches are a jumping punch, but all jumping punches are indoor punches, all right? Someone said I forgot about Dre. Better not forget about Dre, all right? That's what Eminem told you, don't forget about Dre. Thanks a lot, man, help me out. All right, cool. All right, fantastic. I hope you guys found that helpful. It seems like in the Siunam Tao, the use of the shoulders highlighted in the long bridge movements are the movements of focus for the shoulder and Chum Kiu. Not so much. Most of Wing Chun is elbow driven, all right? Why? Because when we hit, we want to recruit the very strong muscles to hit our opponent, right? And what are our strongest muscles? Our strongest muscles are the ones in the back, our lats, our tricep. These are the muscles we want to recruit, all right? The shoulder, just using the shoulder here, you can tell even when you work out at the gym, trying to just use shoulder-based movements, you don't have as much muscle recruitment as you do when you use the entire back. So that's why shoulder-driven movements are a low percent. Somebody unmute your mic. Shoulder-driven movements are a low percentage in Chum Kiu because they're a low percent, or actually a low percentage in Siunam Tao because they're low percentage in Wing Chun in general. We're a mostly elbow-driven style, all right? So you're gonna see that more and more. I'm sorry asking things incorrectly. There's a Chum Kiu book coming out. No, AJ, the Chum Kiu book is already out. The Chum Kiu book has been out since last year. You can buy that already on our pro shop at citywt.com. This tutorial, however, will be available for purchase. And those of you who did the live tutorial, you guys can get it for super, super cheap. People who didn't do the live tutorial, they'll pay full price for this. But I'm going to re-edit it and put all the slides in. So even the video version of what you did today will look different. Like the version will be different because I'll edit in the slides, and I'll also do a full, complete demonstration of the Chum Kiu form at the end. For the back step, do you use the ball of the foot, I assume, to turn? No, the entire flat of the foot, this way here. We turn on the center of the foot. We're never off of our heels in Wing Chun. Cool, cool, cool. Yeah, so don't forget, Chum Kiu book's already out. The next is the Chi Sao book, and then Wooden Dummy, and then BUG, and then Wing Chun 101. And then I can retire off to Wu-Tang Mountain. All right, cool. Well, if there are not any more questions, I will. If new to Chum Kiu choreography, do it slowly and add a consolidation idea. No, the consolidation idea is part of how we move in Chum Kiu. The hands and body are moving at the same time. That's already consolidated. They should practice it slowly and correctly. Remember, the 3 steps to learning anything are: 1, understand what you're trying to do. All right, that's already the first step. 2, practice slowly and correctly. And then 3, train for speed, power, intensity, attributes, all right? Most people try to rush to number 3. They can barely do the form correctly and they're already trying to do it with power. They can barely do Chi Sao correctly and they're already trying to spar. Understand what you're trying to do, train slowly and correctly, and then you have to earn the right to number 3, which is train for speed, power, intensity, or whatever other attributes. You should spend most of your time in the second one, all right? 1 and 2 are the most important. People always want to rush to 3, and that's why you see so much slops out there. All right, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will re-edit this to make it seem like it was technically flawless, all right? Thank you guys so much. Miss you guys, and we'll see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.